Welcome to The Smoking Spot, a really good podcast about weed. I'm Ryan Herron in Portland, Oregon.
And I'm Amanda Breeze in Toronto. And on today's episode, we are talking about cannabis and ADHD.
These things are tightly connected in one way or another. The more you dig into the research that has been done around the two subjects, there is a lot of crossover. Also, I'm here to give my personal anecdotal experience of being diagnosed with ADHD, especially as an adult, and likely managing it with cannabis my whole life. So let's dig into it. It's a pretty meaty subject. There's a lot of places we could go. What was the first thing that kind of caught your attention when we started digging into this, Amanda?
I have spent about a month reading scientific papers on ADHD and cannabis.
It goes deep, right? Do we
It
want to
goes
talk
deep.
about agonists and how like our dopamine receptors are affected, or are we just going to kind of like talk about how people who have ADHD tend to gravitate towards cannabis and why that happens? I think we're going to cover it all.
Well, we should start by saying the research that's out there about cannabis use and ADHD is so very, very limited. And most of it is case studies, which means that it's done with like 1 to 3 to 20 people. These are not studies that have been widely, deep dived into by scientists. Like there's very, very limited scientific research on the topic. There's a lack of clinical studies, right? It's just because we just legalized. So a lot of it is sort of anecdotal, but I find a lot of value in that.
The best place I found for reading up on this, because like you said, the white papers even are not even studies themselves. They're saying, hey, look, we scraped all of these studies we found respectable about substance abuse disorders and then pulled down what we could about ADHD and cannabis. Okay, well, you're not studying that directly, but you were able to pull some info down. But the best place I found, Reddit.
Oh,
Yeah, and it was great because it's 100, 200, 600 people giving their anecdotal, giving their personal experience stories about being affected by either of these things. And it's also really nice because I'm in cannabis communities. If I put this question out, 98% of the responses I get are going to be positive, but not so when you're there on Reddit, and you do get a more positive spin than YouTube, which, by the way, was terrible for looking up the subject. Really, really awful. You can just tell they've taken anything off that wasn't just referring to cannabis as marijuana. But Reddit was great because you just get like all of these people from all walks of life chiming in on what has worked and not worked for them.
so would you say that the Reddit posts that you saw were overwhelmingly positive towards cannabis as a solution to ADHD?
I would say they were generally positive. I wouldn't say overwhelming because there were folks that got in there with their negative experiences.
Okay.
Also interesting was reading everyone else's experiences on medications and hearing their past and history and what to expect when you've been on something for like 5 years or something like that. And then also hearing from people who have been using cannabis for a long time and talk about what that's like day to day use for 10 years, 20 years.
Interesting. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I mean, that checks out. Before we get into the research, I would say that I am one of those people that, after over a decade of cannabis use, finally acknowledged my use of it therapeutically and how it actually benefits me to complete tasks and get things done. So for me, when people say, oh, I have a really hard time focusing, whether it's diagnosed or undiagnosed or just a focus issue, like a lack of attention, I usually recommend cannabis, high CBD, low THC. That's kind of my go to. But generally, I would say when recommending it to clients, they're usually people who are already consuming cannabis. They're not like someone who's never really used. They're most of them are regular users, and I recommend a slight adjustment in what it is that they're trying to see if it helps with the attention stuff. I've never met a person with focus issues where my first response was smoke some weed about it. Unless they're heavy smokers, they're already regularly using cannabis. I think that is just like a differentiation I want to make. I don't usually jump to that as a first response.
Right, right. And I think that's kind of why you see a lot of people sort of come by it more naturally because, all of the early recommendations they give you when you're having focus issues are the things that a lot of people are already doing. Okay, are you making lists? Yes. Are you building in little rewards throughout the day? Yes. Are you setting timers for things? Yes. All of these little tricks that are really effective if you have focus issues. And you're right, you wouldn't just say like, okay, eat a low dose gummy and see if that helps. But I think it's important to remember this is kind of an issue with, let's call it executive function. It's how you prioritize what's important. And it might be really hard to prioritize calling the electricity company and asking for an extension for your bill because that is an activity that doesn't offer any excitement. It's very low on your list. Now it's probably high on your priority list. They're going to turn off your power. Shoot, you got to call them. But you're sitting there procrastinating it, pushing it off. You're thinking, I don't want to do that, and because you're not going to get that dopamine hit from like picking up the phone and calling, and then they're saying, yes, we're not going to turn off your electricity. It's so much easier to like pick up your phone and doom scroll because when I see that picture of that fucking melt shot where they're pulling that Philly cheesesteak apart and I'm, oh damn, that is that's lighting my brain up. Now I'm thinking about sandwiches. So it is one of those things. Cannabis can increase dopamine in your brain. It can like fire more off. It can give you that little reward you need to call up the damn power company or wipe the counters down or stay focused for like 5 minutes on mopping your floors because then you're not sitting there with your phone propped open doom scrolling because that's the only other way you can get that like little bit of excitement in your brain.
Yeah. I thought you meant full melt hash actually at first. So
I get really excited about that too, but with Instagram's siloing of all the cannabis content, I see so little of that. It's all grilled cheeses at this point.
oh, that's really funny. That sounds good too. I mean, weed and snacks. That's the vibe.
Yeah, I mean, we should just add a whole snacks part to this show, and then we'll pick up twice as many people.
Should we just stop talking about ADHD and get right into the snack category? Like,
Well, one of the things I found when I was diagnosed is that people who have ADHD should avoid certain things, and one of those is red dye, yellow dye. These things
oh,
are known to affect people, and you go, "Shit, I do really like a hot Cheeto now and again." And you think about how much red dye are on those, and how it's like, "Oh yeah, I really should avoid this as a snack that could increase my anxiety or attention deficit disorder."
oh, that's going to be tough in America.
Oh yeah, yeah, we put that shit on everything.
Okay, should I go through my notes? Should I read because I read a really good it sounds like we read the same study, the one that came out last year in 2023. Um it was titled The Link Between ADHD and Cannabis Use Disorders.
Yes, we read that. So yeah, why don't you lead, and then I'll chime in with the things I found interesting.
Well, I'm impressed that you remembered so much. I had to take full notes when I read it because there was just that, we say it every time, but these white papers really cram a lot of words in there. And Ryan and I are not fucking neuroscientists.
Absolutely. And that's why if I miss on something or I say something a little wrong, like, hey, I'm not a neuroscientist. I'm a nerd that was spending my free time reading white papers. And
Well, and the thing is, when you start looking into cannabis research, a lot of what's the summarized bits of these papers are the catalyst for websites that then talk about it. And it's not always as thorough as you want it to be. So even though it would be easier to just read other people's summaries of these studies, at the end of the day, you got to go to the source to actually get the full picture, not just the little snippets that people are pulling.
right. Yeah. Well, okay. Are you going to talk about cannabis use disorder?
Yeah, I because I think actually what I gathered from this, it didn't really come to a conclusion, but it sort of gave me this infinity moment because they're basically saying cannabis is the most used drug in the ADHD population of people, and that cannabis use disorders or substance abuse disorders are very common among people with ADHD. So the catch 22 is that you're already predispositioned to have a substance use or cannabis use disorder because you have ADHD, but then you also use it to alleviate the disruptive symptoms of the ADHD. So it's like this infinite loop of like, is the cannabis helping or hindering, or is the ADHD making me addicted? Like which is it, the chicken or the egg? Honestly, that's what I really took from this. So I think to really get a full understanding of how deeply interconnected these two things are, we should like start at the beginning a little bit, because there was some little moments along the way that were my little aha moments. Um, because one of the very last lines of this study is that cannabis has both neuroprotective and neurotoxic effects.
Oh, my favorite.
Right? So that's sort of again this catch 22, because we know it's been well documented that cannabis affects your short-term memory and some of your cognitive abilities. So in that sense, it would be a neurotoxic, but if it's helping find the motivation, boost that serotonin, then maybe it is a neuroprotective. Like I just chicken or the egg.
Yeah. Well, and also think about PTSD and how that can actually, in both senses, help you move past that, have a regular day, be not so affected, partly because your memory is also affected and you can focus on the present and not be stuck in some other moment or like in like some anxiety around a subject.
Maybe I'll just pick out some of the things that I thought were most interesting and that people will also find most interesting about cannabis and ADHD. Okay. So, one of the things that they reported was that inhibitory control as being a negative of having ADHD and using cannabis. So, whereas I actually thought it was a positive. Okay. So basically, inhibitory control is like a core executive function. And it's the idea of being able to control your attention, behavior, thoughts, emotions, override strong internal predispositions or external lures, and instead do what's appropriate or needed. So many people reported that cannabis negatively affected their ability to do these things. Whereas for me, I find it positively impacts my ability to do these things. So it actually increases my executive function when I use cannabis, whereas many people said the opposite. Does that make sense?
I am right there with you. And that was kind of the note I wanted to get into a little earlier about cannabis use disorder. The way it is defined is essentially that your cannabis use gets in the way of doing your natural day. It makes you say, "Oh, I wanted to do that thing, but I didn't." One of the qualifications is if people say, "Hey, you shouldn't smoke so much because it's affecting you." And most high functioning daily using cannabis users like ourselves don't have those issues. You know what I mean? I'm not sitting here like, oh, damn it, I didn't get to washing the dishes because I smoked so much weed. I'm like, oh, I'm washing the hell out of this dish and I'm stoned out of my mind. And I can't wait to have my reward smoke for washing the dishes. So, it kind of goes both ways. And I think that's worth considering when you're thinking about things like, okay, a lot of people in these studies said it affected their ability to finish painting a fence.
That's actually what I found so curious about this study is like, as much as I don't want to admit it, I'm probably fall into the CUD, the cannabis use disorder category, because I'm like you using it all day, and thusly it doesn't negatively impact me in the traditional way most people find cannabis would impact them. Like the into couch moment where you're just like, I'm not saying I never just do fuck all, but like I can smoke all day and then choose to do fuck all, but it's like because I am a chronic user, it doesn't impact me in that way. So it's like, again, which is which? Is the cannabis use feeding into it or is it helping it? Like, and again, these are all self medicating people. For the most part, no one in any of these studies has been prescribed cannabis to solve any of their attention or executive functioning issues. We are all self medicating and then reporting back on it. And I just find that very interesting as well.
Yeah, and like think about the things that did qualify you for a medical exemption. 10 years ago when you had to go get your weed card. I don't know if that was a big part of Canadian culture at the time, but it was here in the States. Typically, it was like backaches, PTSD, migraines, not, oh, it helps me vacuum my house, But for real, like you get some good weed and you're like, all right, time to go clean the grout.
Exactly. Something else I found really interesting in this study was they talked about the role of the endocannabinoid system, or the ECS, in both ADHD as well as SUD, which is substance use disorder, as well as CUD, which is cannabis use disorder. Okay. So they're saying that the endocannabinoid system, and this is new research, that it's basically showing that it has a larger impact than we initially thought on how our neurons and our brainium is working. So let's say, for example, CBD. People have recognized CBD as being an antidepressant and also helping enhance cognitive effects. So, me personally, when I need to get work done, I pound CBD drinks. So, for me, that really, CBD really, really works for me. 5 to 10 milligrams, perfect. But our endocannabinoid system is a neuromodulator. And as you know, it reacts to our CB1 and CB2 receptors. Now, CB1 is memory, learning, cognition, mood, motivation, emotion. Okay. CB2 was formerly thought to engage primarily with our immune system and our bodies, our skin, different types of receptors. Whereas now, more and more studies are showing that it actually has a higher effects on our dopamine. So they're thinking it has more to do with our neurological systems than previously thought. And again, because we're just starting to study these things.
That's so cool. That's brand new news to me. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? Like I hadn't heard that before. So it's awesome to me that we're still getting into the endocannabinoid system and seeing more and more what it unlocks. And yeah, we'll just leave it at that because I could go down a million avenues from there.
Yeah, but it's so true. Like that was very interesting to me because, working with topicals, we're always talking about the different receptors, the skin being the largest receptor. Anyway, they're finding these new studies because what they're doing is starting to image the brain, right? People are imaging the brain and they're actually able to use like science and diagnostic tools and really expensive equipment to start to study these things that previously we were not able to study. And so basically, this report goes on to say that the ECS is important because of its involvement in emotional regulation and our motivational processes. So they're acknowledging that that is part of what it's our endocannabinoid system is doing. And so that means that it also plays an important role in our executive functioning, particularly in relation to our DNM. The DNM is your default mode network. The official definition is it is a consistent pattern of deactivation across our constituent brain regions during task related activities while showing abundant functional connectivity and the regions when you're awake and alert but not engaged in goal oriented activities or attention demanding tasks. Okay, so what does that mean? It means that's executive dysfunction. Literally, that's executive dysfunction. So your brain, you're alert and aware, but as soon as you're tasked with something that's goal oriented or requires attention demand, those areas of your brain are just like, whoops, no, we don't work. No, we're not on at all. But as soon as you're not doing anything of importance, it's fully activated. So this is what the DNM has been. It's an area of the brain that's being studied because it's like, how can this always be on, but just turns off when you need it the most? So the thing about these DNM regions of the brain is that they have been shown to contribute to executive functioning deficits associated with ADHD. And it's the same region of the brain that affects your SUD, substance use disorder, and the cannabis use disorder, which is the same area of the brain that relates to motivational and reward circuit dysregulation. So, what they found was the association between the DNM and THC in executive function. And it highlighted that the endocannabinoid system and ADHD and executive dysfunctioning or functioning is all intertwined. And so now we have some actual concrete science. We have concrete science here that's saying, oh, these things are all interconnected in the brain. However, like basically what I just said is the scope of it. So there's not a lot of information available, just insofar as a lot of these studies, cannabis studies, tend to end with more clinical trials, more scientific research is needed. This is kind of one of them. But I feel like what's nice, it feels validating. Like I think anyone who's diagnosed with ADHD knows that they're perfectly capable of completing a task, but is like, but why can't I do it? And it's like, well, all of these pieces are interconnected. And now they're also, so that's the DNM, but now they're also saying THC, the endocannabinoid system, also impacts this. And they're all interconnected. So that's what I mean when saying that this research is showing that the endocannabinoid system does play an important role in relation to the DNM that is specifically linked to reward and motivation.
Yes. Right. And I mean, if you're anyone that needs like a tiny little treat to do anything, like that doesn't mean you have ADHD, but you get it. Like you get that thing of being like, okay, I got a soda water in the fridge. And as soon as I send off these 3 emails, I get to drink it. It's like, yo, that's like a 25-cent soda water. It's not that exciting, but I have built it up in my head to become a reward because I need that to click off these emails. You know what I mean?
Exactly. For me, my reward is my little doobies because I love my spliff. So I'm just like, send one email, smoke one spliff, right? Everyone does that, right?
I mean, if you're not surrounded by an overflowing ashtray and now you have a zero inbox, then I don't know how you're doing it. I really don't.
So called out right now. That's rude, Ryan. That's fucking rude. Uh,
I mean, it's right here, so I don't know what to say. Yeah.
okay, so we're going to learn a new word here for all of our smoking spot listeners. Maybe you know it, maybe you don't, but the word is comorbidity. Okay. And that's an important word when it comes to this study and this infinite loop that we're discussing, because comorbidity basically is when you have simultaneously existing medical conditions. Okay. So in this instance, we're talking about ADHD and cannabis use disorder. So this is what's called a comorbidity because we have both of these things happening at the same time. What they're saying is basically that daily cannabis use is frequent among ADHD people. It is extremely common. It is our drug of choice.
Well, it's as high as 23% of ADHD sufferers. 23%, y'all. That's a lot.
That's a lot.
I mean, right? I'm definitely smoking my share. So, hey, other 3 people of that 100%, let's talk. Maybe y'all should smoke one.
Well, also, I didn't answer this questionnaire for this study. These are limited studies, so the numbers are valuable to show like more than a quarter of people who have ADHD who were studied also are addicted to smoking weed. So that's just worth noting because a quarter is a very high number. So that's interesting. Okay, then we're going to add another layer. Plus, individuals who use cannabis as self-medication are more likely to have ADHD. You have ADHD, you're more likely to use cannabis, or you're using cannabis and self-medicating and you're more likely to have ADHD. Plus, cannabis use disorder can lead to issues like ADHD. So if you didn't have ADHD, but you're chronically using cannabis, you may develop ADHD like symptoms because of your cannabis use. Okay, new layer, new level unlocked. Okay. But at the end of the paper, they're basically stating that individuals with ADHD, and this is diagnosed ADHD, use cannabis as a coping strategy and they find it effective for their ADHD symptoms. However, new layer unlocked, cannabis can worsen these symptoms as well. And that's why the whole paper ends with cannabis has both neuroprotective and neurotoxic effects. So that's the full notes that I took of that study. Those are the things I found most interesting to me. But I think that it doesn't necessarily answer any questions. In fact, it poses more questions. What I took from it and wanted to deeply understand is the fact that all of these areas of the brain are interconnected. Cannabis use disorder, substance use disorder, ADHD, motivation and reward, executive function slash dysfunction, and our endocannabinoid system. These are all interconnected and all doing things at the same time. But no one's proven which works and which doesn't, which kind of makes sense to me because the other little piece of the puzz that we haven't puzzed in yet is that everyone's ECS is different. So if you eat an edible and you don't get high and I eat the same edible and I think I'm fucking dying, that's because our endocannabinoid systems are different and process cannabinoids differently. So how can we ever truly know what works for who when everyone is so different? Like, it makes sense to me they don't have an answer because there's just so much going on in your own body.
Right. And, when I worked at this really, when we were running and we chose to be snooty at this dispensary where people would come in, it was like, oh, I really want to get blasted out of my mind. We would be like, well, each endocannabinoid system is different. And so you are going to have some self experimentation before you find out what really works for you. And, that's kind of like a long winded, annoying answer when I could just be like, smoke this jack, man. It's true for this if you want to approach it like a medicine, or if you want to approach it like part of your regimen that's going to help keep you on task and feeling rewarded and not feeling robbed of your ability to complete a task, because that at its worst, like you said, that is really what this feels like, is like, fuck, I know I could just pick up the phone and call whoever I need to call, but I can't do it. I can't even really put my finger on why. So treat it like I don't need to get my ECS blasted to achieve the results of staying on task. And I think that's where we can kind of see the negative effects come in, because I can take a 100 milligram edible and like I'm a daily user with a high tolerance and I am on the couch. I'm going to sleep there all night with my shoes on. But if I'm all day taking a little puff off a joint or hitting a vape, and then I'm having a little coffee to offset the sort of sleepiness I get from that, and moving throughout my day, sort of titrating both of these things, that has worked really well for me as somebody who also is keeping lists and setting alarms and setting timers and considering medication. Take that or leave it. That's what works for me. But I feel like that's probably the most effective approach to making cannabis work for you and not against you in this situation.
Yeah. I'm not a journaler. I'm not really into journaling, but it's good to keep track of this stuff. And I think if you're like a chronic user or a new cannabis user and you're trying to discover your self medicating schedule, if you will, even though schedule is a strong word, it's definitely chaotic over here.
Yeah, yeah, same. But
But over time, I've discovered truly that the 5 to 10 milligrams CBD is perfect for me to get something done. And I will sit and I will do it. For me, it has like a similar effect to taking like Ritalin. Like, I really will focus on the task and get in the zone, complete what I'm working on. Now, this week I tried something new because I really like smoking CBD flower. Like, usually during the day, I substitute my THC for CBD flower. But I ran out a couple months ago and I just didn't. I have a bunch of weed, so I'm just working through my stash.
yeah,
But this week I went to a 420 event. We're going to talk about 420, but I did go to an event and the brand had CBD pre rolls as part of their offerings for the people at the event, which I rarely to never see brands bring CBD, rarely to never. And I tried. They had a 1-to-1 and I've been putting a little bit in my spliffs and I feel on top of shit. So earlier when you said full ashtray, empty inbox, literally me. I fully cleared out my inbox yesterday and I'm attributing it honestly to this pre-roll.
yeah, yes. And I think that you kind of like hit it right there. Like, that's the target. Go ahead and find the cannabinoid mix that works for you. And what did you say earlier? It was so perfect. It was like high CBD, low THC, start low, and you can't go wrong.
Yeah.
And you can't, right? And I think like even if you're in a corporate setting, you got your CBD bevy, you're tossing back a little bit, like either you're going to notice that it helps and affect your performance, or you're going to feel like a little more like relaxed at work. And
Oh, I
like,
see.
I'm
Yeah.
not saying that's the best case scenario, but you could get away with that.
Oh, yeah. And it's really, truly, I always say that about CBD. Just find a nice low dose. Start at 5 milligrams. Why jump to 50 when you could start at 5 and 5 works, right? Because the effects are so often subtle that it could be great at 50, but maybe five is the right one. So I always tell people start with 5 milligrams. And I often drink CBD drinks at work because I'm not going to consume THC while I'm in the workplace. That's just, it's still considered unprofessional to just get high at work. But the CBD is not getting me high. It's not impairing me in any way to complete any task. And if anything, I feel like I'm actually getting things done. So I really highly recommend that. And I've tried a few different methods of CBD. I like my drinks, but they're very expensive. So I'm not going to spend $8 a day just to get some work done. That's crazy. But I did find some dissolvable powder from a Canadian company, and I think it was like $15 for 100 milligrams, and it lasted me like a couple months. And it's in little packs, and I'm not even weighing it. It kind of looks like cocaine, and you guess you could put it on a little scale and weigh it out.
I have a little spoon around my neck. It's for CBD, and I don't want to talk about it anymore.
We are not snorting CBD, guys. We're dissolving the powder. So I'm just eyeing it out. I just eye it out because it's like whatever.
Yeah.
Each pack is 10 milligrams. I try to put a quarter in. I don't know. It doesn't have to be exact. But this new pre roll, I hate trying new things because once I like them, I keep buying them. So I'm actually mad that I like these pre rolls.
Ooh, you know what? I found pre-rolls so curious lately. I'm always in dispensaries. There's always like new brands, new flavors, all things. And I'm as somebody who rolls their own joints. I'm like, who are these for? Who totally? And no, I embrace them. I smoke plenty of pre-rolls. I think they're like nice. You know what I mean? But I also think like you nail a good mix, like you said, and you put it in an easy to grab sort of thing, and you want to smoke it. Great, that's perfect.
Yeah. I think that's the difference here because you guys have deli style. If it was deli style, I'd always be buying flour, but here we don't see the nugs. So what's the difference between buying a pre-roll and a pre-packed bag? You really still so pre-rolls are very popular here. I want to talk about 420, but I don't want I don't want to ADHD our ADHD conversation.
Really, we kind of hit everything that's important, and it also just kind of points out to folks who might be relying on this and not even realizing it that it's really common. It's super common that if you have focus issues, you're likely using cannabis or caffeine or some combination of both. They both increase dopamine in separate ways. You're likely self-medicating in a way that if you are, like, maybe recognize that and make it work for you and not against you.
And if you haven't tried it, maybe go for it. Because just last week, I was talking to a friend and they were doing some stuff and they were like, oh, I have such a hard time sitting down and focusing. Now they're a vape pen smoker. So they were just puffing on their vape to high THC while working. And I was like, have you tried CBD drinks? And they said it really did help. So if you haven't tried these combos to get your work done, maybe give it a go. Like you guys, clearly ADHD people are using cannabis to help them get shit done. Like if we're going for the takeaway and all the anecdotal evidence points to yes, this is helping, let's stick with that one because I'm gonna smoke weed anyway.
Yeah, it's not slowing me down. Well, and there's one more thing I want to say on this. After getting diagnosed with ADHD and wanting to see what sort of medication offerings or options I had, my primary doctor refused to prescribe me anything because of my cannabis use. And right, they said is if I that they would not prescribe me until I presented a clean urinalysis. I was very surprised to hear that. And I'm just I know a lot of people have dealt with this before because I've spoke with people. So I pushed back. I spoke with a psychiatrist who was then able to put me onto a psychiatrist that was out of my network but still covered by it, who was able to talk to me realistically about what medication options I might have. I still check in with them, so to be continued. Maybe we'll revisit this topic in the future. But altogether, it took me 9 months of pushing through the bureaucracy of my, hospital network and insurance companies to finally just be able to speak with someone who could put me in that situation. So it's still stigmatized. It's still kind of considered something that is a negative and could affect your ability to possibly get medication.
One of the studies we didn't so much reference today was a 3-person case study, and they specifically chose people who were taking medications, like pharmaceutical medications, and using cannabis. And I think a little undertone of that was to destigmatize it, because there really isn't enough research for your fucking doctor to be like, no.
Right, right. Nice to wrap that up. If anyone has any experiences with it or wants to reach out to us, feel free. We're here, and we'd love to hear your perspectives as well.
Yeah, and we're both doctors and scientists, so anytime.
No, Amanda, you gotta stop telling people that. Stop. You don't have the credentials. You do have the credentials. I have seen the paperwork to go hit up like 6 parties on 420. So since we're recording this just a day or two after the event, why don't you just catch us up on it?
Okay, so I'm wearing my Majun shirt right now. I got it this weekend.
Oh, that's what that is. It's a rad shirt.
Isn't it beautiful?
I thought it was a date company, legitimately.
No, it's Majun. It's the original edible.
Okay.
And so I was working for them this weekend. It's a woman-owned business based out of Toronto. And I did 2 events this weekend, Ryan. It was so fun. I think this was one of last year's 420 was rolling the world's biggest joint, and I got to meet Afro Man, which was my literal high school dream come true.
Yes, beautiful. Thank you for the throwback pictures. That was wild.
Oh my gosh, that was so fun. And I thought, what could ever be better than this? And this year, honestly, it was really, really fucking fun. This brand called Divi was having a high art afternoon. And so we went, they gave me 2 tickets. It was so fun. And I brought my friend Miranda, and me and Miranda we both went to the same art school at different times, so I knew that we would both have a really fun time doing arts and crafts together. And now we both work in cannabis, so Miranda came with me, and we made ashtrays at a pottery studio and little stash jars, and then we glazed pipes. So we got to make 3 different things at this event, and it was like 3 hours long. Ryan, the food.
Oh, yes.
I've been to a handful of Divi events now, and I've got to say, they always have the best food. Like the best food. A couple winters ago, they brought a chicken and waffles guy in with infused sauces.
Great. Yes.
This time
Keep
around,
doing that.
it was El Paisa, which is like a Mexican joint in town. They made homemade empanadas.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
All of this sounds great. Yeah, you're killing
Okay,
me.
now
Like
we're
right
on
now,
the next one.
I need to go. I need to go get some arepas after this or something.
When I tell you I didn't stop chewing the whole 3 hours I was there, I am not exaggerating, dude. I did not stop chewing. The food was so fucking good. And then they had the CBD pre rolls, and I was like, am I in fucking heaven? Like, this is everything I could have asked for in a 420 event. Also and then we made crafts, and Miranda was there, and Curious Cannabis Co. My friend Zara was there. So it was honestly like such good vibes. And I just had a literal fucking blast. And then in 3 weeks, I get to go pick up the ashtray.
Oh, really?
It's plural. The thing,
Yeah,
yeah, because
yeah,
they have to fire it.
totally. I love that. Oh, damn. Can we do that here in Portland? I want to do like a paint your own ashtray, come pick it up later type thing. That's
Yeah, so they actually gave us clay, and we made the ashtrays by hand, but they pre-made pipes, and we painted the pipes. So like, because that's more advanced skill level for a bunch of potheads in a room eating snacks.
Oh no, I couldn't smoke out of something I made with these hands. I've done that before from Home Depot, and I'm pretty sure I gave myself, metal poisoning. Don't do that. Yeah.
The old aluminum can trick. For sure. I smoked a lot of plastic in my day too, but no, these were pretty legit. So that was such a great way to start the event of 420, Cannabis Christmas. And this year was a palindrome. I don't know why that tickled me so deeply, but it truly did.
It's fun. You know what I mean? You get that, and you get to be like, ooh, it's frontwards and backwards. And ooh, we only get one of these 420s.
Yeah, I thought it was cute. And then after that, I went to a Can of Kick It event. It was my first Can of Kick It. They're like these really fun crew who does like music festivals, and they had like a DJ, and they had like this guy who had overhead projectors and these like gobos and like different transparencies on top, and he had three of them facing the wall, and he was like moving them and doing like wall art using light, and I was like, literally, holy shit, this is so cool.
Yeah. Who needs fish in the sphere in Vegas when we got this guy over here playing the gels?
Yeah, literally playing the gels. I was what is this? I was so stoked. So that was pretty cool. And then let's see. And I was working for Majun. Okay,
Yeah.
so I want to talk about Majun. So Majun is the original edible. Literally, the recipe that she uses for her edibles is like 1,000 years old. It's how edibles have been made since the beginning of edibles, and it was mostly with keef and hash, which made me think of our episode last week.
Crop circle.
And I was thinking about that, and and they have two flavors. One has like rose petals and cardamom and walnuts. They're like, Ryan, they're so delicious. I got to spend the whole night watching people who have never tried it before. You know, they're coming up to taste, to sample, put it in their mouth, and every single person made the same facial expression, like,
You're like a Dorito. This is 1,000 years of flavor. Nice try. Try this one.
man, it was just such a great fucking event. I rarely rep the brands.
I know. When you told me that you were wearing a weed shirt, I was like, nah. But you are, so all right. That might be a first for the podcast.
It is a first because I never rep the brands, but I really got to say it's a fantastic fucking product. It has a beautiful story, and the company is ethical and wonderful. And I'm really proud that I was part of the team for 420. That was actually like quite an honor for me. So I'm actually appreciative and grateful for spending 420 with Majun edibles. So that was my excitement, and I still have this shirt. Look how cute it is.
No, it's rad. And check to see if this episode is on YouTube because there's a very good chance it's going to go up there at least in some part, and you can see Amanda's shirt and me awkwardly leaning in.
And Ryan's tan.
Oh, my tan, yeah, my working in the yard tan. That's what it is.
I want to hear it. What did you get up to?
I went to a barbecue pop up because I can't help myself but to stand in line for some limited edition food. Uh, Barbecue and Dougie, one of the chefs here, Doug Adams, I think his name, some kind of famous chef here in Portland, did a pop up of chili dogs where they like smoke brisket all week and then turn the brisket into a hot dog and then top that with some like fancy chili. I was like, oh, okay, wife and kid, you got to drop me off at this bar for an hour so I can stand in line to eat a chili dog. And they were like, of course, we get it. We'll pick you up. So hey, that was fun, and that was very 420. That was they were doing some more shit around that to kind of like hype it up for 420. But I'm like, I gotta beat the big line and get there early. After that, OG Invitational, the Cheechable event with Jim, great, super nice. I wasn't able to stay for the awards, but great people. I saw later who won, and everyone super deserving of all the award shows. This was like the homie hookup. Like these are the folks that you want represented. So I really like that. Like a lot of times, award shows get bombed by mediocre companies just hoping to place somewhere and like catch some awards for their like I don't know investors, and this wasn't that. So much love to them. I thought they did a really nice event, and I hope they keep it up because it's only going to get better. But I cut out of there to go to the Stay Mellow event.
Oh, you were busy. Oh, geez.
You know what? I got encouragement from everyone. It's like, come out, do this, do that. And I still miss some things. But Carmelo Anthony launched his weed brand here in Portland. And as far as like celebrity weed brands go, which are typically not that exciting, I thought this one's cool because they've partnered up with a black owned grower here in Portland, The Loud, and they grow really nice indoor weed. I think it's a really nice brand partnership. Jesse has previously worked with Ben and Jerry's to start their weed company, which gives Most of the proceeds, if not all of the proceeds, back to, I think, the Last Prisoner project. You're going to have to, don't quote me on that, but they're doing that sort of work. And this seemed like a similar sort of brand where they're like leading with advocacy, and the weed's going to be really good. And also it's branded really well, which I'm a sucker for. So I know that Oregon is a really tough market to launch a celebrity weed brand into. But I think it's a really good proving place to say, hey, look, we've got all of the pieces in place to go expand this into other markets. And the food, everybody, like, a super crowded bar. It was like a place down here in Slabtown. It was like kind of fancy. And so they're walking around with these like past hors d'oeuvres. And I'm like, no, thank you. That's, oh, sure, but I'm not that. And then eventually they corner me and I'm like, oh, that looks really good. I didn't turn down a bite of anything after that. It was the best food of any party I have ever been to, and I'll give them all the credit for that. And so, yeah, hey, stick around, throw more parties, let's do some food, let's do some weed combos. Like, I think it kind of opens things up for what a celebrity pairing can be. Like, we had a bunch of Bob Marley stuff here in Oregon that just failed spectacularly. And I just feel like they led with merch and trailed with the quality of their product. And this could actually be the opposite.
We talked about this a little last week, but the thing is, Oregon is a craft market. And so if you're bringing in some big name celebrity, the people, that's not what the people want. You know what I mean? Like, I could see why that wouldn't necessarily take off, and that's what I love so much about Oregon, right? But at the same time, it sounds like they're trying to go about it in a very respectful way, working with some local businesses. So, we want to see our people thrive, but I do understand the struggle of that. So wait, okay. Before we go, did you see the pictures of David Down's Weed Week Mylar Bags gallery event?
Yeah, and I think it's really cool. It sounds like they're going to be bringing it to other cities and maybe even internationally. And, like David said, do cool art shit with your friends. And I'm like, yes, yes,
Go check
very
out their
cool.
Instagram, you guys, because seriously, the way they displayed them on the wall, the ones they shortlisted, they did a bunch of lives maybe a month or two ago where they were going through all the submissions, and they had like 25 plus binders of Mylar bags, and they were like, this one's in, this one's out, like picking which ones to display. And I was like, even just watching the live, I was like, this is going to be tough. Like, there's a lot of good ones, but holy fuck, it looked so cool. It really looked so cool, the ones they picked and how they displayed it. And oh, David, come to Toronto. I want to see it. We don't have cool Mylar bags here. So that was cool. But then I also saw, where I'm going with this is that every year, Hippie Hill, San Fran has a big event. And this year, and the city helps sponsor and donate like bathrooms, police presence, whatever. They give things to make sure that the event is safe and follows city regulations. This year, apparently, they couldn't get sponsors. The city decided not to pursue it. And so the event was canceled. But go look online because a million people fucking showed up anyway. Oh, no one's going to
Yes.
be there. So like 10 people showed up because it's tradition. No, like a million people showed up because it's tradition, despite the fact that organizers said, don't come. The pictures, Ryan, are amazing.
Just monster clouds and people celebrating. Yeah, I mean, I wish we could really get into all of the events still that we couldn't even go to. The Billies in New York, this big historical award show. I mean, I knew all kinds of folks that flew out from Oregon just to go to that, and all over the place. Really, Austin has their insane 420 parties. Yeah, just a lot of really cool stuff this year. And now that we're kind of quasi legalized nationwide here in the States and legalized there in Canada, we're starting to see people actually have like fun with it.
Exactly. No, exactly. And I'm stoked. This weekend was great. What a great 420. Like, honestly, it sounds like you had a good one too. And it always comes down to the food. The food makes the difference. It really does, with some really elevated snacks. So
Planning for next year, right? Start your nacho lazy river or whatever you're going to build for next year.
I'm just really proud of us because last week both of us said we're not doing anything for 420. in our little chit chats between the two of us, we were like, "Yeah, I'm not gonna do anything," and you were like, "I'm not gonna do anything," and I'm like, "Yeah, I think it's just 420. Who cares?" And in the end, it's like I fully stacked the day. It was nonstop events and work. Right? We're both working.
Yeah, and then the whole week leading up to it, thankfully everybody had their sales going, not just on the day, but I would just stop from here and there. Oh, this guy! Oh, they're putting this up over there. Oh, the toad venom is going up at Oregrown. I better swing by over there. So we should have maybe a little cultivar sesh smash on a future episode here because there's a lot of new stuff to go through.
There is a lot of new stuff. All right. Well, anyway, let's fucking go. Way to go, ADHD episode. Listen, listeners, we've been putting off this one for like 2+ fucking months. It's been
Yeah.
on our list of things to talk about. And so I just want everyone to be really proud of us because we finally did it. So a little pat on the back for me and Ryan for working through our to-do list, despite rewards and or motivation. Here it is.
Oh no! Despite rewards, now is reward time.
Yeah.
We just did the thing, so roll one up.
And don't forget to check us out on YouTube. We just brought our podcast off of the listening onto the video streams. And hopefully you guys will be able to see this and our faces as a video. Anyway, see you next time. Thanks for tuning in.
Said no matter what kind of pain and anguish life may bring you, oh, smoke it up, hold it down, and don't ever stop. Well, you can always find your smoking spot. Yeah, you can always find your smoking spot.